All right, EntreArchitect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the EntreArchitect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, January 26, 2023. Thanks for joining me today. As you get here, say hi, let us know that you're here, and let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff, and I'm in Indianapolis, but I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. It doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you circled a date on the calendar. You said 2023 is my year, and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 10 years or 27 years, and you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. As usual, for these Context and Clarity live conversations, I am joined by my co-host, Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
I was muted there. You think I didn't come on the show every week? Hi, Jeff. It's nice to see you.
I thought maybe I was going to be talking to myself for a while. It's nice to see you. It's great to have you here.
Well, we were a little late today, so
We're working on some
sometimes things happen
things
out there on the internet.
Oh yeah. It's technology. Some days it works, some days it doesn't, and we never know why or why not. So here we are. We're all good. We're ready to go. I'm looking in the room. I'm looking in our audience, and it looks to me, do I have this right? I think Janine from Arizona is the first in the room today.
And, I'd say not that it's a competition, but it is actually.
It is a competition.
It is.
Janine's the first in the room, which means that she is the winner of today's John Kenny Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. So congratulations, Janine. Glad you're here with us today. Glad you're first in today. Janine's joining us from Facebook, and Christian is joining us from Ithaca, New York on YouTube. John Jones says hello from somewhere. I'm guessing Connecticut, but welcome back, John and Yoko. Kurt is up in Flint, Michigan. He's leading the audience from Twitch. And Laura Peters. Hi, Laura. She's visiting from Ithaca. She teaches mindfulness. I know. She knows Christian. She has to. Christian knows everybody in Ithaca, so Laura has to be friends with Christian. Glad that you are here, Laura. Scott Thrift, welcome from Facebook, and I think you're up in Oregon today. And Leslie from South Florida. If you right now are looking at all these comments and going, hey, I've been commenting away, but my comments are not showing up, it means you're probably in a Facebook group, a private, closed Facebook group. If that's the case, Facebook has rules, right? Facebook has these privacy policies that say that your name, your likeness, your comments can't be let out of that group unless you give permission for that to happen. So what you need to do is take a look at the URL that's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now, chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook, and open a separate browser window, type that in, and a couple of clicks later, you will give Facebook permission to talk with Restream, which is this platform that we're on, and that should solve all of your problems. Although we're going to get into that here in a few minutes, but that'll at least get your comments up on the screen, like Jessica from Los Angeles, and Janine, she's doing a Restream check. She says, so go to chat.restream.io/FB if you're on Facebook and your comments aren't showing up on the screen right now. All right. That being said, we've quarantined our guest in the green room for quite a while now. Have I forgotten anything?
No, I don't think so. If you forgot it, I've forgotten it.
Okay. Well, good. I'm in good company, and we'll just keep moving forward. I'm really excited about today because for the first time ever in the green room, the green room is stocked with vegan chocolate chip cookies. And you know how I feel about chocolate chip cookies. We've made a lot of progress today. I'm just saying.
Right. I don't know how you feel about vegan chocolate chip cookies, though. But
I don't know the difference, but you had me at chocolate chip, so I'm good to go.
okay.
I'm good to go. Maybe we'll find out more about that here in a few minutes, but let me introduce our guest for today. Our guest today is a former monk, a keynote speaker, and an authority on the future of work, resilience, mindfulness, and mental health. He's the author of both Urban Monk, Exploring Karma, Consciousness, and the Divine, and Closing the Apps, How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home. Pandit Dasa, welcome to Context and Clarity Live. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Very, very happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. And to give everybody a little bit of backstory, last week, I guess it was still last week, I moderated a panel discussion for a mentoring program. And at the very beginning of that program, Pandit joined us to talk about mindfulness and then take us through a guided meditation. And that had a big impact on me. That really resonated, the way that you talked about mindfulness and the importance of it, and then took us through that meditation. I thought was really impactful. And so I immediately reached out to the organizers of that event and said, "Hey, I need to connect with Pandit, because I think, if we can expand this conversation from that group, that mentorship program, which is a fantastic program, to an even wider audience of architects, I think we can really make some waves here in the profession, especially with small business owners, small firm owners here." So I'm glad that we were able to connect, and I'm really happy that you're here today. When we think about, let me back up, because I mentioned in the intro that you're a former monk. So I want to know a little bit more about how one becomes an urban monk, and then what happens after that. So can you give us a little bit of the journey to becoming a monk, and specifically an urban monk?
Yeah. So, becoming a monk, it's not something I think anyone ever plans to become a monk or a nun. I don't
Okay.
think you can ask, I think, 10 million kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm not sure if any one of them is going to say a monk or a
Yeah.
nun. I just don't think that's something that comes out of their mouth, right? It's not even on the radar. And the last thing the parents want their kids to become, too. So it also wasn't, yeah, living in poverty is not like the goal of life, I think, for anybody. Right? So living in renunciation. So the way it happened, again, like I said, it wasn't planned. A lot of different events led up to a certain mindset, which made me want to explore that lifestyle. It
Okay.
wasn't just one thing. And what were those events? So I'll quickly go through them. So I grew up in Southern California, in LA. My parents migrated from India to the US in 1980 with little to no money. One of the first things they did was set up a small shop on Venice Beach, California, selling gift items. And everything, life was difficult. They were working 7 days a week, nonstop. I was 7 years old, just running around Venice Beach, exploring the US, exploring whatever Venice Beach had to offer.
Mhm.
And within a matter of about 8 years, my parents were able to establish a multi-million dollar jewelry business. How it grew, I don't know. I was really young, but a lot of hard work, and also I think just a lot of luck also.
Mhm.
Right things happened at the right time. So we began living the American dream much faster than we expected to. And so everything was great. Got a beautiful, massive house on the hills of Los Angeles, with a pool, a jacuzzi, a waterfall, like the whole works, right?
Yeah.
One all out. Things were great for a while. Then in 1992, 1993, my parents' jewelry factory during a heavy rainstorm actually burnt down.
Mm.
And we lost everything, right? From nothing to everything and back down to nothing. So going back down to nothing is really hard after you've had that much. And so at that time, my dad's trying to figure out what to do next. So he decides to explore new business opportunities in post-communist Bulgaria.
Okay, I didn't see that coming.
No one does. That's why the story is interesting. So we pack up, we leave LA behind for good, with very little left. Go to post-communist Bulgaria in 1993. Now, to give you an idea what post-communist Bulgaria was like at that time, no one spoke English, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Everything on TV was either in Bulgarian or Russian. All the movie theaters had movies from the US that were like 5 or 7 years old, because I think
Okay.
during the communist regime, nothing was allowed in. And all of my entertainment basically came to a halt. I had no friends there. I didn't speak the language. There was no internet.
Yeah.
And even making an international phone call couldn't be done from the local phone at home. You had to walk to a post office to make that call.
Okay.
So about 50 years behind in technology is where I went, I jumped in a time machine and went back 50 years. That's kind of what happened. But it was that time when my life had turned upside down. Life was very difficult. I was confused, anxious, a little depressed, just all of those things that come with such a sudden move
Mm-hmm.
to such a foreign place. I started to practice mindfulness at that time. Meditation was familiar to me because I'd seen my parents do it. Coming from India, it's kind of part of the culture,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'd seen them do it. So I did it also, and it really helped me deal with the craziness that we were going through. And then we spent 2 years in Bulgaria. And because it was so unstable, we didn't feel very safe there. So we left and came back to the US, this time to the East Coast. And my parents set up a small business in New York City, helped them with that a little. Then in 1999, I finally decided I needed to take a break from life and just press the pause button and try to figure out where my life is going, what I want to do, and how I want to live. So I decided to go to India to live in a monastery. Catherine, do you see that one coming?
Yeah, that's a little more, that's not as surprising.
Okay, all right. From the East Coast to India.
Yeah, that's okay. But Bulgaria just seemed like it was out of the blue from, yeah.
So here I am. I fly off to Mumbai, India. And here I am living with 40 monks. Everybody sleeps on a hardwood floor with a really thin straw mat. There's no cushioning. No one has a mattress. No one has a bed. No one has their own room. It's just two big common spaces, and everybody just sleeps there. Same thing with the bathrooms. They're all common. Everybody wakes up at 4 in the morning. Meditation starts at 5, goes on for several hours. And the rest of the day is spent serving one another, cleaning, cooking, serving the community. It's a life of simplicity, humility, and service. And to my own surprise, that lifestyle started to grow on me, fell in love with that lifestyle. Thought I'd spend a month in India, but I ended up spending 6 months there in different monasteries. Flew back, moved into a monastery in New York City on the Lower East Side. Thought I'd spend 6 months there. And Lower East Side, it's a very interesting place. On the same block, on the same street, like literally the same block of our monastery, you could find right next door to us was a tattoo shop, like right next door. And then three restaurant bars across the street, a pizza shop, a funeral home, a bagel shop, and a laundromat, all on basically one block, and the monastery.
All
Wow,
of life.
everything you could need
All of life
right
in
there.
one.
All of life. A bagel, a tattoo shop, a monastery, and of
Yeah.
course, very importantly, the funeral home is there too. Beginning of life to end of life, it's all covered. So it's funny thing is that the funeral home was literally, if you walked out of our door and walked straight across the street and go into the funeral home, it was right across. So anyways, those are some of the major life events that led me to that life. And then 9 years, and I spent 15 years living as a monk in New York. And during that time, I did a lot of lecturing on college campuses like Columbia University, New York University, and traveled around the country on college campuses speaking on mindfulness, meditation, work-life balance. Then about 9 years ago, I left the monastic life and have been speaking in organizations globally on workplace culture and mindfulness and mental health.
So you mentioned when you were young, you had seen your parents meditate, and you said when you were in Bulgaria, you'd started to practice mindfulness. How old were you at that point?
21.
Okay, so you're 21. What did practicing mindfulness mean to a Southern California kid that had moved to Bulgaria that's 21 years old? What does mindfulness mean to you at that point? What's that look like and feel like?
At that time, I was just trying to figure out what life was all about and why what was happening to me was happening. Like sort of like that question we asked, why do Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? So those were the questions I was asking. And I
Okay.
figured that I needed to go internal and meditate and see if I can figure that out
Okay.
while I was going through all of this. So for me, it was about finding the answers to life.
Mhm.
Stress management, I mean, it was so crazy in that time that I didn't even know what to think. So for me, it was about finding answers, like how and why could such drastic changes happen in someone's life who didn't seem to deserve them.
Right.
So for me at that time, that's what mindfulness was about, like
Okay.
finding answers to something that just didn't make sense about life.
Okay. Okay. And so you fast forward about another 20 years, and now 20 years later, maybe you're getting ready to leave the monastery. I don't know if I have the dates exactly right, but you're getting ready to leave the monastery in New York. What what does mindfulness mean to you at that point?
Mm. So I think the mindfulness can be very broad in how it's practiced.
Sure. Yeah.
It can be very broad. The way I teach it is extremely secular, all sort of science based, showing how it can be helpful for people and the way they reduce their stress, help people become more thoughtful, have develop more empathy, have more emotional intelligence. So the way I teach it is quite different to the way I personally practice it, which is a little bit more spiritual.
Okay.
So I also have the secular components to my practice. A large portion of it is because I lived in a monastery,
Sure.
right? And that it's very deeply rooted in spirituality. Like, what does that even mean? It means really trying to go within, trying to understand who I am and what my purpose is. Like who I
Mm.
am beyond the material shell that I see when I look in the mirror. Like what's really running the show inside,
Sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so kind of like Neo in the Matrix, that sort of a thing. Like, is
Now
this
you're talking.
am I in the matrix or am I out of the matrix? How do I get out of the matrix? So
I
that's what
think
I
we're
mean by
getting it.
spiritual, that the practice was geared towards discovering sort of like the matrix we're living in and how to get out.
Hmm.
Okay.
In core organizations, and what I led for the session that I did with you the last week is more about managing stress, managing our emotions, and learning to breathe during difficult situations so we
Mhm.
can stay calm and focused, right? So it's more on that side, and my personal side's a little different, because the focus is more internal and sort of understanding my place in the world.
Well, speaking of last week, I mean, one of the things that you talked about, and this is your second book, I believe, the Closing the Apps. You talked about you used that analogy of closing the apps, and I mean that I thought was a great illustration. I thought that was a great analogy. Can you just share that analogy? What do you, whether it's getting into the book itself, or what does that idea mean? But what does it mean to close these things down, and then what does that do for us once we've closed them down?
So I like to compare the mind to a smart device. And I
Sure.
know we all have too many of these right here, right? We've got them.
Mhm.
And what on a smartphone, when you have too many apps open, basically it slows it down and it drains the battery. It just
Yep.
doesn't function as good as it should.
Right.
Now, the mind being like a smart device, how many apps are open in our mind right now? Right? I don't know if people are welcome to put in an answer if they want, but I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of apps open in our mind at any given time.
Right.
Yep.
And if we don't learn to close out those apps, what's going to happen? Like, we're going to make mistakes when we have too much on our mind, right? We've all had the experience where you're holding your keys and you're like, man, where did I put my keys? Where did I put my keys? Right? And you feel so crazy at the end, thinking, my gosh, I hope nobody saw that. I'd lose my job and all my friends if anybody saw what I just did. Or leave your coffee mug on top of the car and you start driving down. Right? So I've done all of these things, even though I practice mindfulness, even though I wasn't. Okay, I got to admit it. So if we can learn to close out the apps up here, just imagine how much stress we could remove from our own life, because a lot of our stress is self-induced. It's generated by ourselves in our mind because we live in our minds most of the time.
Mm.
We're thinking and planning and coming up with all kinds of strange scenarios. We replay negative things that have happened to us unnecessarily over and over again. I'm sure we've all done this, where we maybe had an argument with someone and then we started to all of a sudden replay that argument in our head 30 minutes later, arguing with ourselves in our head back and forth between what they said and what I said and what this said. And then we try to add new dialogue into that replay, how we could have said it better, right? So much time is wasted, energy is wasted just by the mind, like running around like wild. And it's just app after app after app. Or we start coming up with the worst case scenarios about the future. Future's out of our control. All we can do is prepare for it and then hope for the best. Plan and prepare and hope. That's it, right? That's the formula, right? So that's all we can do. But we worry ourselves to a point where we lose sleep about what tomorrow holds. No one knows. And so if we can remind ourselves to close the apps and not do all of that, then we actually save ourselves a lot of mental and emotional energy, give ourselves more clarity, and just be more peaceful through. And it's not easy to close out the apps, but at least we can start trying, and then gradually we get better at it. We catch ourselves when we're having a useless thought and say, wait, why am I having this? Let me get rid of this right now. Close it out, breathe it out, let it go. So that's what I like to do. Compare the mind to a smart device.
And I love that analogy, because because I identified completely with, you're talking about the past and the future, and yeah, 100%. When I cut the grass or shovel the snow or whatever, I'm replaying, I'm going through the coulda, shoulda, woulda about this argument or this conversation or whatever. And then I'm getting ready to go to this, and I'm imagining worst case scenarios, at Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. Right. So that resonated with me 1,000,000%, both of those. And so I like that analogy, but what happens when we shut all those apps down? Then what does that allow us to do with the smart device? I guess technically it frees up memory, that can be used, for other functions and so on and so forth. But what does that mean for us functionally as human beings? Whether it's at home or at work or whatever, I don't know what the context is, but what does that mean when we've got those shut down?
Well, basically you leave open the apps that you just really need at that time. Mm-hmm. Right? So imagine you're driving a long distance and your phone's running out of battery. You want to close out as many apps as possible so your GPS can keep running. Right? So when we close out all the stuff we don't need, and really then it'll help us get to our destinations. And what does that all mean? So if we're having a conversation with someone, face-to-face conversation or virtual conversation, and your mind is planning all kinds of stuff, we're not even listening to what they're saying.
Right.
We can't be thinking about other stuff and deeply listen to what others are saying. So at a workplace, that's crucial. We could be missing what they're saying because we're coming up with a response, or we're planning the future, or we're thinking about the argument we had an hour ago, and yet we're trying to talk to a colleague. Same thing at home. We can't be as attentive and present and mindful if we're distracted in our head. Mm-hmm. Right? So a wandering mind, we all have a wandering mind syndrome. That's what we have. And so closing out the apps, and new apps will keep opening, but you can't train yourself to just come right back into the present. So, look, I'm staying with this conversation. You notice your mind go off to the grocery store? No, come right back here because this person's in front of me. Now you're thinking, oh, this is the route I want to take to walk my dog. No, I'm going to stay right here right now. We're going to go on that route later. It's like a practice. It's like so the mind, another way I like to describe the mind is like a puppy. A puppy is not going to walk straight. It's going to be like here and here and here and here. That's what our mind's like. We've got a puppy in here. Just never trained the puppy.
Yeah. And that seems critically important. You were talking about work colleagues, which makes complete sense. And there are certainly those in our audience who that resonates with, their employees or their colleagues, whoever those people are. But I think taking it even further, because I think one of the things that is crucial about professional services professions like architecture or attorneys or whatever the professional service is hearing, listening deeply, as you said, developing empathy and understanding for our clients. And it seems to me that what you're talking about would be critical for this as well. It's really hard for me to serve my clients at this level if I'm thinking about the grocery store, the walking the puppy, all of those things. Seems like I could connect better and be a better service provider, if I can say it that way, if I'm present, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And people can tell when we're not present.
Yeah.
People can tell. I mean, I've had this experience where I'm having a face-to-face conversation with someone and my mind has wandered off for like a good 20 seconds
Mhm.
or 10 seconds. And then you reach a moment of panic. Like, if they ask me a question right now, I am not going to be able to answer.
Yeah.
Because those 10 seconds, it's like driving at 80 miles an hour. In 10 seconds, you go a long distance.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, people can tell if we're not present. And so we just need to practice being present. And it's a lifetime of practice. Don't expect it to just you start today and next week we're going to be present. No, the mind disappears into another thought before us even knowing it. We realize we're in the middle of a thought 30 seconds into it. We didn't even realize. It's like getting off the highway and not realizing you took an exit. Like
Yeah.
that means your car just drifted off. So our mind, we have to understand, it is very much on autopilot. But we got to take control of the mind, not in a bad or harsh way, but we just got to, you don't want somebody else, we're not sure if a full self-driving mode is a healthy thing.
Yeah, that's the least mindful thing ever when you arrive somewhere and think, how did I get here? I don't remember driving here at all. Yeah, that's not good. May I just ask, it's kind of irrelevant, but what kind of monk were you?
So I was a Hindu monk,
Oh, okay.
which is, lots of meditation within the Hindu tradition. I think most of it comes from there.
Okay. I'm just wondering.
So you're talking about this practice. You're talking about training the puppy that's in your mind. How do you go about doing that?
Well, several ways. One simple practice that we can all do if we want to start training the puppy is as you go through the day, here's a fun exercise we can all do. As you go through the day, anytime you catch your mind drifting off to something that if you're driving and you realize you're thinking of something else, at least catch yourself like, wow, I was just thinking about that. And then the second question to ask is, how relevant was that to what I'm doing right now?
It's
And then you'll
interesting.
realize most of the time it's not even that relevant. Whatever we're thinking of, it's just the random stuff.
Mm.
So first, what happens is when we do this exercise, and just try to do it on an everyday basis. Whenever you're doing something and your mind just, eating a sandwich and your mind's just like, whatever, it's like, okay, wow, how did it go there? Like, how did I go from eating my sandwich to remembering my favorite 80s song?
I know.
Like,
How does that happen? Do you have any idea, or you
I don't
just
know how that
wonder?
happens. I mean, it's everything gets stored in the mind. The mind is the biggest hard drive around. Like the amount of data it can store is phenomenal. I don't think there's actually any end. I don't think there's any limit to the cloud storage that's up here. Right? I
And
just
it's
think,
free.
yeah, it's totally limitless.
Yeah.
And so when it decides to pull something up, I have no idea. Maybe that sandwich is a sandwich that you ate when you were in the 80s listening to that music, and we don't know what it's doing in there, how the wiring is all connected. But anyways, going back to the point is like when you catch yourself just as a fun activity, notice that you're doing that and then bring it back. And just keep practicing this when you're driving, when you're walking, when you're working. Notice it like, wow, this happens all the time. And you'll be amazed as to how much. There was an interesting article in Psychology Today that said an average person has between 25,000 and 50,000 thoughts per day.
Wow.
Jeez,
Is that good or
That's
bad?
that's a lot
That's
of
bad.
thoughts.
it's just a lot.
Yeah.
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 So that's 1,000 to 2,000 thoughts per hour, right? That's what it's averaging. So
Hmm.
it's an incredibly busy place. Within every few seconds, it'll just run off to something. And most of the time, we're not even aware that it's doing it. So first is becoming aware. And then second is including some mindfulness practice, the breathing and focusing, because they help us to focus the mind. They help us to strengthen the mind. So these breathing and focusing techniques, one way is you can think of them as taking your mind to the gym.
Hmm.
It's a gym for the mind. You're training it to be more in the present moment. And it doesn't mean that we're always forcing our mind to be in the present, because there's times when you're relaxing and the mind's just wandering and it needs to decompress too. Let
Mhm.
it wander. When you're relaxed, taking it easy after the work on the weekend, and the mind just, okay, let it. Let the dog run free in the fields for a while.
I love I love this analogy.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
know I'm
keep
throwing a lot of
going
them out
through. Yeah,
there.
it's great.
Something for everyone to relate to, I hope. So, gotta let the dog run free once in a while,
Yeah.
right? And that's okay. But when we need it, we have that training, make the mind more focused and present so we can do whatever we're doing more effectively. So
Hmm.
those breathing techniques can help. It could be a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes a day, something or another. Or what I like to say is, why not do like a minute of breathing exercises several times in a day?
Mhm.
And when we do something several times, what happens is your mind remembers that, hey, I need to do this. It
Right.
becomes a habit. Like, oh, I just had
Yeah.
this rough meeting. I think I'm going to take 3 minutes or 2 minutes and just take a few deep breaths before going into whatever I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
Even if I show up a minute late for my next meeting, at least I'll show up a little bit more calm. Otherwise, I'm going to bring all this, you know, garbage with me, and this anger or frustration from the previous interaction. I'm going to bring it with me. So better I show up a little more relaxed than to show up on time and all frustrated because I'm not going to be able to hear anyone anyways at that point, or it's going to be really hard. So
Yeah.
doing it a minute or two several times a day is how I like to prescribe it, sort of.
Mhm.
Did you already describe that and I wasn't listening, or did you just talk about it last week with Jeff? The breathing exercises, because I
Yeah.
didn't hear it. I must have been maybe thinking of something else, or maybe you didn't say exactly what it was.
When you're talking about breathing exercises, what are they? What are some breathing exercises that you like?
So I like to start by just taking deep breaths. And when I say deep breaths, like really filling up your lungs with each inhalation. Like breathe slowly, and whoever's on the line now, you can do it right now. Breathe in such a way that your lungs keep inhaling until your lungs are filled. And when you think, oh, they're filled, actually there's a little more space. Keep going, and then it also helps us strengthens the lungs because you're really expanding them. And when you exhale thoroughly and completely, empty out your lungs. And to stay present, try your best to stay focused on the breathing exercise. That's it. Just breathe. Now if you start thinking of your next meeting, again, say, I'll go back to that in a moment. Right now I'm breathing. Right? Come back, keep breathing. And each time you breathe in, see if you can take in a little bit more oxygen than the previous time, because your lungs have had a chance to expand. Right? So just doing 5 or 10 of these deep breaths, you'll be amazed as how much more calm and relaxed we feel. Like, what do we tell someone who's panicking or stressed? Hey, take a breath, take a deep breath.
Mhm.
Because there's also research showing that this deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, where you get your whole diaphragm involved, it actually regulates our emotions and our blood pressure. So that's something you can do at your desk. You can do it while driving your car. Just keep your eyes open, right? So
Preferably. Yeah.
yeah, so you can do it almost anytime you want to. You don't have to put on a yoga outfit to do that. You could be at your desk, just go outside, wherever in a conference room, just take some deep breaths, and you'll see that it helped you calm down a little and just gave you a little bit of mental peace so that you can keep working and keep doing what you're doing.
I think, yesterday especially, so I don't think I explained this. What we do with context and clarity is We find out who our guest is going to be for Thursday. Obviously, today that's you, and what we're going to be talking about. And then we shape an entire week of conversations around that as a theme, if you will. And so we Monday we start out by talking about positivity, and Tuesday I don't remember what we talked about. Yesterday we talked about resilience. And to me, what you're describing right now, I'm picturing you're talking about filling the lungs up, and you can fill them more, and you expand them, and you're training them. This really does sound like training of all types, whether we're into athletics or, whatever it is. It's this constant cycle of pushing myself, to some limit, and then coming back and pushing myself again and getting better at it. And what we've talked about in terms of resilience is that must be a part of resilience, the ability to, I don't know if it's absorb it or whatever, but train myself to, take the breath, calm myself, and then come back from that. Are these exercises that you're talking about and the mindfulness that you're talking about, are those keys to the resilience that we need to overcome the stress, the change, all of these things that we face as small business owners?
Yeah, I mean, so resilience, the way I see it, it's like our ability to bounce back from a setback,
Okay.
right? Like a spring, you squeeze it together and you let it go, boom, it bounces back, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's resilience. And in order for us to bounce back, we need the right frame of mind. If we don't have the right frame of mind when we've experienced a setback, then you could just be, oh, woe is me, and why is this happening to me, and I can't do this anymore, right? So, and maybe there are certain things we can't do anymore. But what I think mindfulness will help us do is, at least what it does for me, it helps me see the bigger picture in life.
Got
Like,
it.
okay, this thing is happening right now, but there's a lot, it's not the end of my life, it's not the end of the world. Because sometimes when we have a problem, we become so immersed in this, we can't see anything else. And what I like to do is, when I go through something painful and difficult, and I have had my fair share of those, I try to remember, and I try to meditate on the things in my life that are going right at that moment, and I feel grateful for those things.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, this really isn't working out, but I'm so grateful for this and this and this. And the more you think, you're like, my gosh, I'm grateful for like a dozen things right now.
Mm.
There's a dozen things that are going at least decent or good or great right now. And then I break out of that sort of immersion into that setback.
Mm-hmm.
Step back and you're able to see the bigger picture. And everything about you is just changed. You're like, okay, that's not working out. I need to either do something different, work harder at it, get some help, do something about it. But I've got all these other things that are going great or going decently. Right? So I think this is a big part of mindfulness practice, is to be able to step back, take a bigger look at life, look at the bigger picture, and also feel grateful. That's another huge part of the mindfulness practice, is feeling grateful. Gratitude is such an amazing way to shift our mindset from the negative to the positive. And
Yeah.
so I think that is how we also build resilience, that these techniques give us the ability, the strength to say, okay, now I'm going to bounce back with the right mindset.
Yeah. That's starting to connect the dots for me. I don't know about anybody else, but that's starting to connect the dots. You've mentioned meditation. Going back to um, when you were in Bulgaria and starting to meditate, you'd seen your parents do it. Um, let's start really basic. What does meditation mean? What is meditation?
So I think it can have a few different meanings. And as time goes on, the meanings will continue to adapt and grow and expand. So, at least for me, meditation means a couple of things. One is that if we are meditating, right, those who are meditating, and people do it for many reasons. One is, I think it should help us discover our true nature and purpose.
Okay.
in life. I really think it should if we're doing it on a deep level. And secondly, it should help us become better human beings, right? Like we should be growing, meaning that, and if we want to be growing, that is, each year we should be evolving into a higher level of a human being.
Okay.
Maybe more kindness, more gratitude, more forgiveness, more compassion, more selflessness. Like this is how we should be evolving through meditation. And all of those things can translate into the workplace. 100%. You become a better human being, you'll attract better human beings into your business. We attract what we become. So if we become these things, you'll attract partners and colleagues and coworkers and clients who also share those values, because people, we naturally
Right.
gravitate towards the kind of mindset we have. So meditation can help us become these things, develop these qualities. As a result, I think it'll improve our business and it'll also improve our family life. So if there's kids in the house, they see parents becoming grateful, kinder. I mean, that's the best thing we can do for them.
Right.
That's what they're learning. That's what they're absorbing in. And that's what they're going to put out into the world when we send them out there.
Right.
So that's how I would answer the question, like, what is meditation?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tool of growth.
So I just realized, I mean, we're screaming towards the top of the hour here. So, when, how do we put this into practice, right? When you're thinking about all these entrepreneur architects out here who, I mean, we could frame them as small business owners that happen to be architects. When we think about the meditation, which is helping us grow and level up in our human being and our human experience, we think about mindfulness. We can think about all these breathing exercises. Is there a prescription, right? Is there some way that you tell somebody, hey, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know. I mean, I understand what small business owners go through, but try this. I'm sure it's a case by case basis, but is there sort of uh, what do I want? Like a baseline practice that we could all start with and use that as a platform to move up from there?
I have a feeling I'm going to end up repeating myself, but
That's fine.
I think for any starting entrepreneur, again, starting off with a mood of gratitude, that having a chance to start a business, having an opportunity to pursue my dream.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is huge, because how many people on the planet actually get a chance to even do that? Right?
I think that's a really good point, because one of the things that I've realized in this community is that, obviously everybody's different, and everybody, I say starts their own thing, does their own thing, but and they have different reasons for that. But the common thread that I see running through here is that probably everybody that is in the audience right now, or they're watching the replay later, they say, I want to be able to practice, meaning practice architecture, I guess, in this context, but I want to be able to practice architecture in my own way, which means integrating my life with my kids and my family, or in my community, or whatever that means to them. I think I want to be able to practice in my own way. And that's where I think this, what you just said and the parallels here are really strong.
Yeah. And I think everyone will have their own way of doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's great to be able to do it with your family as well.
Yeah.
Right. Having the whole family do it. But yeah, I think we can find our own ways to do it, our own places to do it, the length of time we want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think these are all very flexible, but going back to the idea, like as business owners, I think the baseline is just starting off with that idea of that I'm having a great opportunity to pursue my dreams. I'm going to do the best I can, and then we see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? Just even the opportunity itself is a gift. Where that goes, it's okay. I tried my best. And to be satisfied with the outcome, especially if we have given it our best shot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really great advice. It's we like I said, we started out the week talking about positivity. How do you stay positive? And we talked about expectations and perceptions, but what you just described, what you just said, I think really hits that nail on the head. We have the opportunity, those of us that are in this community and are figuring out how to do this. We have this opportunity, and we need to be grateful for that. And starting from that point of view, I think really sets the table, sets us up for something to build on, I guess, is what I'm trying to say there. There are so many more things. There's so much we could dig into, which I would love to dig into, but we have to be mindful, if I can say that. We have to be mindful of the time. Pandit, where do you want people to go to connect with you?
So I think the best place is probably my website.
Okay.
It's called panditdasa.com. There we go. I think it just showed up on the screen.
Magic.
And on my website, you can find both of my books. One's called Closing the Apps. The other's called Urban Monk, Exploring Karma, Consciousness, and the Divine. That's the whole story on how I became a monk. The different speeches I give at corporations are listed there. There's lots of short videos of me talking about mindfulness and gratitude on my website. So there's a lot of material there. And then LinkedIn is something I'm very active on as well. So if people have a question that didn't have a chance to ask today, you can message me on LinkedIn. You can find my profile pretty easily. And so, or through my website, but LinkedIn is better for questions. But yeah, those are the two ways that we can connect. And, people can also follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Pandit Dasa. So I post on there pretty much every day. So these are the different channels people can use to connect with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I'll second what Pandit was just saying, because it's, again, I appreciate you being here, and our serendipitous connection last week is fantastic, and the ability to communicate with you like this has been great. Again, there's a lot that we left untouched here. I would encourage everybody to first of all, definitely connect with Pandit on LinkedIn, but go over to his website. It's down in the lower left. The URL is in the lower left corner of the screen right now, and just start exploring. There's a lot of really great information there. I've been combing through it this past week and used it to help shape our week of topics and just learning more. So I would go over there and check that out, and connect with Pandit, ask him some more questions. And I think these topics that we've been covering this week are things that we need, right? We talk about this broad umbrella of the business of architecture, taking care of yourself, your mind, your body, your spirit, your family, all of these things. I group those under that umbrella, because if you can't do that, if you can't take care of yourself, there's no way you can take care of your business. So Pandit, thank you very much for this conversation. I appreciate you being here and everything that you've shared. It's definitely things that we need to dig even deeper into.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Katharine. Thank you for having me as part of this conversation. It was a great conversation. I'm glad we could go a little deeper on this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this. And thank you to everybody out there. I say this every week, but I really do mean this. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for you all making context and clarity a thing, is how I usually say it, we wouldn't have this opportunity to talk with Pandit today. So thank you all for being part of this community and participating in these conversations. Selfishly, I just love having these conversations. So thank you for this opportunity. A reminder, tomorrow, in case you missed it, this month we have been reading the book Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. We're going to be discussing that tomorrow it's our book club episode of Context and Clarity. So 4 p.m. Eastern, we will talk about unreasonable hospitality. I've been recording short videos, kind of breaking that down for you. So go find me on TikTok or the Context and Clarity Instagram account. You can find those videos, or over in the EntreArchitect Network. They're posted under the books channel as well. I've got a few more of those yet to produce and post, but maybe by the time we have the discussion tomorrow, I'll get you all the way through the book. But join us for that discussion tomorrow at 4. And again, Pandit, thank you. Really appreciate you. Katharine, thanks for co-hosting this with me. And to everybody out there, please take care of yourselves. Be well, stay safe. Take a little bit of time to breathe and relax. Find some way to rejuvenate. We do this every day, as you know. This is, I don't even know, we're 670 some odd conversations in at this point. So thank you for each and every one of those. Thanks for going along this journey. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.